little bit about myself. I am currently employed, and then I also own my own consulting business, and I decided to start it up last year. And I do it a little bit on the side to dabble, and I just I enjoy sharing information. I enjoy learning from others. I am a registered dietitian. I also have my master's in organizational leadership. I have more than 20 years experience in food service operation, in school districts, hospitals, nursing home, and currently at the Department of Public Health and Environment. So my whole career has been nourishing children and adults, and I really enjoy doing that. Um, the other thing I like to do is precept dietetic interns, and that involves sharing knowledge on dietetics, how to contribute to public health, how operations are managed, following federal guidelines, state guidelines, and just really enjoy passing knowledge to others. So I really appreciate being here today and being able to do that. So let me start off with a question. Feel free to share in the chat box or unmute yourself. But how many of you enjoy record keeping? You could use the raise your hand feature in Zoom if you know how to do that. At the bottom, there are reactions. Many of you do not. Nope. Yeah, it is a daunting task, right? And hopefully this training will give you some ideas and motivation to encourage record keeping in your own business. So just to highlight what we're going to talk about today is learning the concept of record keeping and why it's important, and understanding the benefits gained from proper record keeping, and share best practices and tools that can be used, and just summarize what we talk about. I encourage all of you to ask questions throughout the presentation. I am monitoring the chat box. It's totally acceptable to raise your hand or unmute yourself as we go through the slide deck. Just, I'd like this to be interactive and be a discussion and just not me, sharing information. I'd like to hear what works for you, and I'm sure others on this call would love to hear what works for you as well. All right, next slide, please. All right, so why is record keeping important and what is it? I don't know about you, but whoops, we can go back just for a second. I don't know about you, but there's been a couple times where I've been at a job that requires lots of record keeping, and I've been audited by the state, the federal level, and most oftentimes they come in unannounced. And it's kind of scary if your records are not together. And I learned early on in my career how important it was and how awful it felt that I couldn't demonstrate what I was doing or prove that I spent money on something, or if a customer needed to know what the menu was going to be or what were the dietary guidelines. It was an uncomfortable feeling not to be able to share that information. It doesn't appear that I'm being transparent or I know what I'm doing. And so good record keeping can really help all of us conduct better business and lead to detailed tracking, compliance, and help us be prepared for audits. Records become your protection if you're ever faced an audit or a tax audit. And without record keeping, it can put your business at risk. Detailed tracking helps keep track of your business. If you're selling goods, you want to be able to have a record of the receipt. I know there's been several times where I purchased something that could be a write-off and I didn't keep the receipt. And so I had to contact the business and ask them to send me an invoice. And so they were able to do it right away. So you want to be able to have good invoices so that customers can ask for it at a later date. Tracking expenses is very important, especially when it comes time to prepare for your income taxes. And as a business owner, you want to be in compliance with your license and your permits. If you employ personnel, you want to have great tracking for payroll. Department of Labor could come in at any time and ask for records of payment. And it's critical that they're tracked accurately and you can show proof during an audit. Hannah, feel free to go to the next page. So I wanted to share with all of you generally accepted record keeping principles and just kind of go through them. And share some details about them. And these come from ARMA International, which defines what good record keeping should include. And this association, ARMA, involves business owners, participants at the state and federal level, lots of people contributing to what good record keeping should be. The first one is accountability. And this could mean that, we're small businesses and I'm my only person in my business. But if you have other employees within your business, or I saw somebody mention that they were here for this training to help their husband business, you want to make sure that if you can't be accountable for record keeping, and keep in mind, it's not everyone's strengths. We have strengths and weaknesses. And so if accountability is not your strength, you could lean on somebody else and designate to help you ensure that your record keeping is adequate and effective. The next one is transparency. This means documenting in an understandable manner and be available to interested parties upon request. So I mentioned that early in my career, I was working at a nursing home and the state came in, and I actually had just started working at this nursing home. And so records were just not kept up to date. And so even though the auditor knew I was new to the position, I felt like I wasn't able to be transparent. It feels better when someone walks into your business and you're able to say, here are my records. Here, I can provide proof to what you're asking for. And not only that, transparency helps build trust with the customers that you serve. So if a customer comes in and wants to ask a question or ask for a past invoice, and you can provide that easily, that builds transparency and trust with your customers. Integrity, making sure that your records and the information generated by the business has a reasonable and suitable guarantee of authenticity and reliability. So what this means is, using a You could use the software to track sales. You could you could, if you work with someone, like for me, consulting, if I work with somebody and provide a agreement, if they are not signing it on paper, and due to the pandemic, a lot of us are working electronically. And so for me, I have Adobe PDF that allows my customers and myself to sign something electronically. And you want to make sure that that electronic signature is authentic, which usually includes a timestamp, date, and the electronic signature. Protection, ensuring reasonable level of protection of your records, especially if they're private or confidential. One example I could think of is a therapist who may operate their own business and do counseling. That therapist would definitely want to keep records confidential and even maybe lock them up so that if theft were to occur, it's harder to get to those records. And I would think any business would really want to protect their records, especially if customer names are on invoices or saved on any of the records. The next one is compliance. We all have to comply with applicable laws. Availability, maintaining records that ensure timely, efficient, and accurate retrieval of records. I talked about that a little bit. Example, customer needs documentation from a past event. Retention, maintain records in accordance with applicable laws. The best example I could think of right now is income tax, filing your taxes. How long do you need to save the record? I typically lean on my CPA to let me know, is it okay to destroy my record? But generally, for IRS, it's anywhere from 3 to 7 years that you want to maintain records. But I encourage you, if you have a CPA, to work with them. And then another thing about retention, if your business is, it starts to get bigger and you have more and more records, it might be critical to develop a retention schedule. And so what that might look like is a procedure, a written procedure that states, this record I will maintain this long, and this is how I'm going to destroy it when the time comes. Disposition, leading into destroy, is a method to dispose your records that are no longer required by applicable laws. And generally, you could record that you destroyed something, but generally you would want to shred them or collaborate with a company that shreds things for you. I know the city of Westminster offers Shred-a-thon usually once or twice a year, and that might be another good opportunity to shred those records. So if there are no questions at this point, I'll keep going. So what are the benefits gained? Hannah, feel free to move to the next slide. I've talked a little bit about the benefits so far, but probably the biggest one is it minimizes risk to your business. So you feel confident when you keep good records, and it's one less thing that you have to worry about, and you can focus on the customers that you're serving or other areas of your business. It protects the data. It preserves knowledge. It proves what you've been doing all along as you continue your journey operating your own business. It leads to better workflow And then effective record keeping can help you have future tax deduction. I know that, I mentioned I started my business last fall, and even though it was, kind of late in the year to start a business, I did see some benefits when, my CPA helped me file my taxes. And so there could be benefits, or there could be future grants that you could be eligible for and apply for. But in order to apply to grants, most oftentimes they want to see proof or records that you're eligible to apply to that grant. Next slide, please. So best practices and tools that can support effective record keeping. For me, I will say that I love organizing, but record keeping is not my favorite thing to organize. And I find that I have to use different methods. And let me share some of those methods with you. Hannah, next slide, please. So these are some of the more common methods. The first one, paper and hard copy. I would say that's one of my methods. I keep a folder. I don't have a filing system anymore. Years ago I had a filing drawer and all the hanging file folders. And what I found that's worked for me is like a plastic organizing folder that I can keep all my receipts, any documentation in one place, so that if I needed them, I know exactly where to go. I keep my business license in there, and any other details. Another way is electronic filing. This could include Microsoft Word, Excel, your emails. It could be a scanner. I like to scan documents and save them to a folder. I recently purchased a photo scanner, and it will scan my photos and also any paper receipts or documentation. And so that's another way that I like to keep my record. The other thing I'll say is Microsoft Excel has kept me very organized. I created a spreadsheet, and it lists all of the expenses that I might have with my businesses. So it might be supplies, it might be advertisement, it might be internet or cell phone or any other technology. And I actually save it by month. And that way I can see every month how much I have spent. And in that same spreadsheet, I save the revenue. And the spreadsheet is saved on my laptop. And I create a folder for Stenson Consulting LLC and save it in that folder. And then another way that I track things for my business is this opportunity today, working with North Metro Business Development. In that, my business folder, I created a separate folder working with North Metro and keeping things separate. So this presentation is saved there. An email confirming that we're going to work together today and I'm going to offer this training. And so that's another way that I like to keep good records. Software companies are another option. Some of you mentioned that you're selling goods, so you might be using a software that could help you sell goods and track, revenue or anything else to that nature. That is not something I use, but it is a benefit. And it allows the vendor to help you store your data. I would just caution that you want to make sure that if the data were to be affected by some sort of natural disaster or something to that nature, that you would be able to retain that data at a later time. Otherwise, you will never see the data again unless you're backing it up on your own. I see a question come in. Would you be willing to share a copy of your blank Excel spreadsheet? Yes, I would be willing, and I will share that with Hannah after this training. The cloud is another option. I've never done this, but I know other companies that do. I know that it's convenient. You can access your records remotely. I know with my cell phone, I do have Apple and my pictures are on the cloud. And so if my phone were to be destroyed, I could log into the cloud and see those pictures at another date. It allows multiple people to access the information at the same time. So if your company grows and you have more employees and you want them to be able to access records simultaneously, that would be another option. And like I said, number 5, multiple methods are okay to use at the same time. It's something I have to do. I'm hoping to get more into electronic filing and away from paper. But I think because I'm so busy, sometimes it's just easier to put it into a folder. One strategy I'm trying to do is, this is my desk. I use this space to work in, and then I use it to operate my business. And so what works for me is having it right there in front of me and knowing that I have to get it done. And what bothers me is having things out, laying around on my desk. And so it sort of motivates me to get it done. So I don't know if any of you can relate, but that is something that works for me. And would I recommend using Microsoft at all? For me, it works. I have purchased Microsoft Office. I use Microsoft Word, Excel. I think it's what I'm most comfortable with. Are there any other recommendations from the group? Feel free to unmute or add something to the chat.
Hey, so I take screenshots of stuff I buy off Craigslist, and then I file them in my taxes. Is that all right?
Yes, as long as you have record and you could show that to, if the IRS was to audit, you just want to keep record. And I think a screenshot is just fine. LibreOffice. I have not heard of that one.
Looks like Karen has used Quicken, so that could be another option.
Yes. Simon, do you want to share a little bit more about Libre?
Sure, yeah. I've worked in the software industry for 40 years. And there is a very large movement of people who put their effort into creating software for pretty much any kind of application you would come up with, including some that you wouldn't come up with. And there are now free operating systems, generally called Linux, and there is a free Office suite currently called LibreOffice. It's also been known as OpenOffice. Basically, if you want your Word equivalent, your Excel equivalent, if you want your presentation software, if you want your database software, you really don't have to pay for it these days. And since Microsoft, along with everybody else, seems to have moved to a rental model where they're effectively holding all your data and your ability to use their product hostage unless you pay them blackmail money, you'll gather I don't like this mechanism they're using. I'm viciously against it on an ongoing basis. If you don't want to do that, then there's free stuff out there and it's really good. You will, of course, have to slightly relearn the way you use it, but unless you're an expert user going into great detail with some of this stuff, it's probably not going to take you very, very long to find it on a menu. And there's bunches of people out there who will answer your questions and help you. Just Google for how do I do this in LibreOffice. There's also free accounting software as well, because I am disgusted at the price that Intuit is charging for QuickBooks now. So I have recently moved off that. Anyway, enough political whatever. I'll shut
No,
up.
Simon, I appreciate you sharing with all of us, and I'm sure others appreciate hearing of it as well. I've never heard of it, but I'll definitely look into it further.
Hey, Simon, this is Scott. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Quick question for you. So how would I get to Libra? And then also, is it the equivalent of what is it, Google Sheets or whatever that is?
If you're using Google Sheets, I use that too. All the Google stuff is free too, and the fact that lives in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about your backups. I think that's totally a valid way of doing it as well. I do both.
Okay, thanks. And then how do you get to the Libra?
I think if you just do a Google search for LibreOffice, you'll find it immediately. Let me just do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, LibreOffice.org.
Okay.
Actually, it comes with my operating system, so when I need it, it's just there.
Thank you for sharing, Simon. And then I see another question from TCLA3. If my bank account keeps record of exactly where my funds are being sent, do I still need to keep record or just get a printout? I don't know exactly what your business is about. Feel free to unmute yourself and share, and maybe we could answer that question. But I will share, for me, and what my CPA has recommended is having a separate account like you that tracks expenses and any revenue coming in. That way, at the end of the year, when it's tax time, I could just print that bank account and provide it to him. I'm still, I don't know that you need to have a printout. I think for me, my comfort level is to have a copy and or scan it. But I think it's something you might want to confirm with your CPA or an accountant.
Okay, so for my account, I do have two separate accounts, a personal and a business as well. With my business account, if I'm traveling, it goes into traveling expenses. If I buy dinner or lunch, then it goes to lunch expenses. Like there's an actual like circle graphed, and then there's an actual that I'll be glad when I see somebody's spreadsheet, of course. But it adds up exactly how much I spent in each category, even for gas, if I swipe it at a gas station. So would it be useful for me to actually keep those records on hand or just upload them to, say, my Microsoft Office, or that would be fine with what my bank account is doing? Do I need to actually keep record for myself? Do I need double records? Does it make sense? Double or triple records?
I'm not an accountant, but what I do is keep the receipts so that if anything is questioned, then I can prove. It goes back to that integrity and transparency. So let's say, for example, I meet somebody for lunch for a potential business opportunity, and I decide to pay lunch. I keep that receipt and document on the receipt who I had lunch with and just that we talked about the business, what opportunity. And that just gives you backup in the event that you have an audit with the IRS.
Gotcha.
But your best bet is to check with your accountant. The laws change, but I think for me, my comfort level is to keep records in addition to my bank account. The business bank account is keeping copies of the receipts.
Okay.
And I didn't catch your name.
My name is Shantae. I was having difficulties actually getting in the meeting. So my name is De'Ara Shantae, my preferred name.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
And
meet
another thing you could do, is take pictures on your phone of the receipt and save them that way. You don't have to keep paper copies. I think that's just my comfort level. I do want to move to more electronic saving, but I just haven't gotten there yet.
I'm still with the paper, so I'm okay. I'm still with paper too. Yeah, I'm still stuck in kind of manual labor, so I'm okay with it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Or comments? Great. Hannah, do you mind the next slide? So this next slide is just a little quote to help motivate you, but I think we all know who Christopher Robin is from Winnie the Pooh. And organization. It is a daunting task, but it is what you do before you do something so that when you do it, it's not all mixed up. Next slide, please. So let's get started on record keeping. I've talked about some of the methods and I've talked about what's worked for me, and some of you have shared what works for you. But I encourage you after today is decide what method you want to use for record keeping. Ensure that your records are kept safe and secure, and ensure business records are kept separate from your personal records. So my husband, when he goes out to eat or he goes to grocery store, I have a little bowl, like a turtle wood bowl, where I keep like my keys and receipts. It's just my insanity of just putting it in a pile and then moving it up here to the office. And so he tends to put his receipts in my turtle. And so turtle bowl. But anyway, I have to make sure that I'm not mixing up personal receipts with business. So just make sure that you're keeping things separate. Plan for it. Plan for the frequency of organizing records. Could it be at the beginning of the month? Could it be once a week? Just decide what works well for you. I like to do it, although my pile is sitting here a little too long, but as soon as I get a record or a receipt or something related to my business, I like to take care of it right away. Or if I have an expense, I like to put the dollar amount in my Excel spreadsheet right away so that I know it's done and I can move on and not stress about going back, remembering what the receipt was for, what the expense was for. And then once you decide your frequency, stay committed. Maybe adding a calendar reminder for yourself, or maybe when you pay your bills, maybe it makes sense at the same time you're going to record your business record. And then reflection, as always, reflection is super important. Decide, have you chosen the right method, and then modify to fit your business need. I know for me, I want to get into more electronic filing, and I have an external hard drive that I lock in my safe. So if there's a fire, hopefully the safe can help protect those records. What works? What are you all thinking about after we, discuss some of best practices for record keeping? What's on your mind? Has this, made you think of ideas that might work for you that you want to share with others? Feel free to add to the chat or raise your hand or come unmute. And Kenneth, I see your comment, and Tully, I think too. Looks like you would like to know my CPA, and would you mind sharing your accountant name and phone number? Happy to do that. Let me, his name is Troy Vigil, Vigil. And I believe he's out of like Westminster, Broomfield, like right on the border. I'll add it to the chat so you have it. And then I'll add his email. So any ideas coming to mind that you would like to share?
Hey, this
Oh,
is
yeah.
this
Oh,
is
go ahead.
Como. I'm just getting my business started, so it's a little easier for me. But I mean, I appreciate all the ideas, right? So like for my business, it's just me, so I'm gonna try to go electronic from the beginning and just either take pictures or create PDFs of any of my receipts. I actually have some expenditures already, so I'm going to try to go through and just convert those into either picture files or PDFs, and then try to get away from the paper starting at the beginning. But then I think your other ideas were good, like the monthly revenue and expense tracking spreadsheet. And then I was thinking maybe have a tab in there for like invoice tracking, like what invoices I sent out and whether stuff got, which ones got paid and which ones did get paid, and tracking my hours and, making sure to track my hours to figure out like, what am I working on that's billable? What am I working on every day that's non-billable? Just kind of things like that.
Thank you for sharing.
Hey, Steve, this is Scott. Yeah, that's all good. I appreciate that. The quick question I have maybe to the group is something like your Excel cable bill or something like that, or internet bill. Do you need to keep a hard copy of that? It seems like that would be overkill, maybe.
So I'll share what I do. We generally pay our bills online, but for like the cell phone bill or internet bill, I just log into the account and save a PDF copy to my files. And that
So
way,
you are saving a PDF. That makes sense. Okay.
yeah, I don't print a copy of that. Again, I use multiple methods. I'm really hoping to get myself more electronic, but I did share it with my CPA this past year. He didn't say I didn't need to, but that's what I do, is just save a PDF.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, and a clean and clear business banking account makes more sense than blending it with a personal account.
Yes. So I see a question about what bank is most popular for business accounts. I don't have a recommendation. I've decided to, after consulting with some of my other friends who run their own business, is keeping my personal and business accounts with one account. That's what I've chosen to do. Is there anyone that has a recommendation for the best banking? I use Chase.
Hi, this is Shantae. I actually use Bank of America. And I started using them because after you do deposit a certain amount, maybe they give you they give you an actual $100 to $500, depending on, your deposit amount. However, I've looked into Wells Fargo. I'm not very fond of Wells Fargo far as a business account would go yet. Wells Fargo also does, they do also have some great opportunities. It just depends on what you're particularly looking for within your business account, or as an interest or anything. I only if you overdraft it, so example, if you overdraft in Wells Fargo, not that you will, but just example, it would be $35 overcharge, as opposed to if you overdrafted Bank of America, you're only getting charged $10. I think it's kind of, but yet I think it's a big difference at some point. So it's all about the choice you would take or whatever would benefit you more. But between those two, those would be my best choices. But I have Bank of America and I love them. So
Thank you.
thanks for letting me share.
And it looks like clarifying comment came through about the banking. What should you look for when selecting a bank for a business account? And I think, some of those comments were just shared, like maybe looking for perks or grant opportunities, I think could be helpful, or overdraft fees or annual fees you might want to consider. Angela, we have some referrals for small business friendly banks. Good to know. Simon, the thing I struggle with, how to categorize something, particularly expenses.
I think that's probably, I apologize. This is Shantae again. I think that's probably why I chose Bank of America, because it did give me the option where they actually categorize your spendings for you. I didn't see where there was an option on Wells Fargo or even in the mobile app as an option. And I think that that's a great option too.
Thank you. Simon, thanks for sharing your comment. I think, as far as categorizing your expenses, if you're using something like a Google Sheet or Excel spreadsheet, I think when in doubt, if you think the expense should have a separate line item, then I would encourage you to do that. But again, your CPA will set you up, or an accountant could set you up to help you identify what needs to be tracked. And I understand some of us may not use a CPA. I actually decided to start using one when I started the business, because I wanted to avoid any issues with state, federal, authorities during an audit. I just wanted to, avoid any penalties or problems in the future. And Angela has some more CPA referrals, which is great news. Megan uses QuickBooks. I have not used QuickBooks, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I hope it's helping you, Megan. Bank of America due to lower fees. And Simon likes to use credit unions, and he's with Premier for his business. Nice. All right, so if there's no other questions, we can just summarize good record keeping by going to the next slide. I don't need to read through this. I hope that you gain some knowledge and ideas, and hopefully it sparks some motivation to, gain effective record keeping. If you should have any questions, my contact info is on the last slide. Feel free to reach out to me or contact me by phone. Happy to answer any questions that you have, or just share ideas or collaborate. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today and share information with all of you. And thank you for sharing your insights. And I learned a lot just in the last hour from all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to leave this up just for a minute so you can all write down Naomi's contact info if you want to keep that. But again, it'll be coming to you in the slides later this afternoon or tomorrow. I'm just going to check the chat here. Oh, lots of thank yous. Yes, thank you so much, Naomi. This was really helpful content. And like Naomi said, thank you all for sharing your experiences as well. We really love when we get to hear from our fellow peers. I think there's a lot of value in that. So we do have a few more minutes if there are any other questions left. Excuse me. But otherwise, like I said, the recording and the slides will be coming your way, as well as some helpful links for referrals and other sites that might be helpful as you go through this topic and figure out what's going to be best for your business as you approach record keeping. So I'm not seeing any other questions come in. So we'll give you a few more minutes back in your day. And again, thank you all for bearing with us through some technical difficulties there, but really appreciate your time, and we wish you all a great afternoon.